Hello, welcome to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I am Tammi Mack. So there is a legacy of trauma in the African American experience that is a result of slavery, the Jim Crow era, police brutality, and so much more. The trauma of the Black experience seems to be normalized in our society through frequent images of Black people being beaten and murdered as they are shared globally on social media platforms on a daily basis. Is normalizing trauma harmful to the Black community? Well, the business of being Black today is the normalization of Black trauma. Please welcome the CEO of Kim Crowder Consulting, Kim Crowder. Hi, Kim. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Criminal justice activist Mona Lisa Johnson. Hi, Mona Lisa.
Hello, Tammi.
Thank you for being here. Booktuber and the host of Bow Ties and Books, Jesse Morales Small. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And actor and producer Trey Elliott is on board with us today. Hi, Trey.
How you doing? You forgot comedian, but it's okay. I'm
Well, listen, I'm sure through your dialogue, you will certainly remind us that you come from the comical world. Right. Listen, I always like to start the show with the same question, and that question is very relative to the title, The Business of Being Black. So why should Black people care about the traumatization being normalized in the culture? Why? Let's start with you, Jesse.
Well, the most straightforward way that I can weigh in is that the overrepresentation of Black pain causes our children to internalize the idea that Black is synonymous with suffering, and that's simply not true.
That's a very simple way to put it. Mona Lisa, why? Why should Black people care?
I think it's absolutely necessary that Black people care because it is running rampant, not just in today's time, but for centuries. Trauma has been seen and has been shown, but people are not necessarily believing. So I believe that you need to see in order to believe, and that collectively we can all come together because everyone's not Black. So if we are shown collectively that there is Black trauma and it is occurring still to this day, collectively, we can be held responsible and we can start to, do something about it, from legislation to awareness. It's important that we do this because if we don't and we stop it now, then what we're going to find is that we're going to go backwards because people just don't believe until they see.
Kim, why? I'm a Black woman. Why should I care about normalizing Black trauma if it is a part of my life?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we look at data around this in psychology, Black people can experience PTSD from continuously seeing trauma. I know for myself, you're on social media and all of a sudden you're watching a video of someone being beaten by police officers. What I'm not saying is that it's not important to move things forward at times, but also we notice in social media that people are talking a lot about Black joy because joy has not been, by and large, so synonymous with the Black experience, which is unfortunate and very much so a misrepresentation of who we are as people.
Yeah, Trey.
Right. Well, I feel as though with it being seen every day is definitely numbing it down and just making us feel like, it is what it is, to where back in the day, there's nothing new going on with the trauma. This has been happening for a very, very long time. But I think now that we can see it every day, it's just making us numb to it. And I feel as though we need to focus more on the non-trauma and the positive things that's going on. That way we can just take that and move forward with that. But like you were saying, every time I pick up my phone and look online, we're just seeing these negative images. I mean, and all this damaging things that's happening to our community, which could really have a bad effect on us. And I just think we need to focus more on the positive aspect. We all know what's happening out here. We all know what the cops are doing. We all know what we're doing in our community. So something that I don't really feel like we need to see every single day, because it's just going to just make it seem like it is what it is. You know what I mean? That's the mentality that I think we have developed over the time.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Jesse said and the point about, listen, Black trauma, if we continue to normalize it, it makes Black people synonymous with trauma. And as Kim said, there is Black joy too. Right. So So is the frequency of the Black trauma that's out there, does it make us equal to a people full of trauma and nothing more, Mona Lisa?
I say that the frequency is there because it needs to be there. There are different levels of trauma that are being seen. It is not just murder. It's not just police trauma, or it's not things like that. I mean, take, for example, with the Sesame Street situation that just happened, the character just refused to reach out to the Black girls. And, that was traumatic at the end of the day. But if it had never been shown, you wouldn't even see that what's going on is what's going on. Frequency, I feel like you have control over what you visualize and what you look at and what you intake on a day-to-day basis. Maybe children don't have as much a choice over that, but we as adults, we do. So, if it's too much for you and you feel like it's not something you want to continue to see, then you should not look at your Facebook thread or look at your Instagram thread, because I do believe that we have to continue to show this. It has got to be shown. So for those of us who are out there who want to make a change and who will fight for change and who will, continue to fight, even though we still want to have joy in our lives and balance in our lives and stuff like that, we have to see this stuff.
Jesse? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trey.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, but for adults, it's something that we can handle. We can handle better. And to be honest, a lot of adults can't handle it. You know what I mean? Like depression is at an all-time high. Mental illness is at an all-time high. Anxiety, you never really heard about anxiety in the Black community until recent. That's because of all the stuff that we're seeing. So it's really having a kind of a negative effect on us. It's like now we don't even want to, we're scared to go anywhere or do a lot of things. And that's adults. So imagine with the kids, the people who minds have not fully developed and they're seeing all of this. Kids have access to so much stuff now that back, when we were small in elementary school, middle school, we didn't see. We had to really watch the news to watch Rodney King get beat up. Now you're seeing people being murdered. And then at that time, our parents can censor us and say, hey, don't watch the news, or we're in bed by that time. But now kids are watching stuff before they go to school. Kids are watching stuff during school. So it's not even really with the adults, it's the kids and how it's developing their minds at this young age as far as what's being shown and what's happening.
So Kim, what is Black trauma? And are people addicted to watching Black trauma? I mean, media that showcases a group's pain and trauma in excessive amounts for the sake of entertainment. Is that what we've become as a society today? Are we using the trauma of the Black experience as pure entertainment, Kim?
I think there's some of both of that's happening. For instance, when we think about what just happened in Black Lives Matter, in that movement, it was because of a video, right? That has been a very big part of this, particularly my work. I work in diversity, equity, inclusion in workplaces. Workplaces have specifically sought us out because of that movement, because of the visuals that we saw. On the flip side, I will say, how many times have you looked at social media and Black people say, I'm tired? Literally, that's the language we use because we have a collective grief that other groups, particularly white folks, do not understand. And so it's not just us who's watching this, it is white folks who are watching this over and over and over, who have gotten used to it. When you think about the difference between watching what happened on January 6th and not seeing anything happen to those people, and then you transpose that to what happens to us at a traffic stop and watching that happen, the difference is wild, but also what that does to your psyche around your personal safety every day, how you feel about your safety every day. That's a big part of this. I don't think this conversation has to happen in a vacuum. I don't think it has to be binary, but I do think we should really be talking about the fact that there is an overload of Black trauma that we continuously watch and consume. And around the mention of we can control what we see on social media to some degree, the algorithms do what the algorithms do. And so if you slow down on something, if you happen to click on something, then the algorithm shows that up for you over and over and over. So we do, sure, we could be off of social media, but there's still a piece of it that feeds that with you, whether or not you want it or not.
Yeah. Jesse, I want to get you in on this.
Well, our perspective, we're going to approach this from the perspective of somebody who is a YouTuber who focuses on literature and the representation of Blackness in literature, because this issue affects the book community as well. And so to say that there are a disproportionate amount of books that hit the New York Times bestselling list, both by Black authors and non-Black authors, to say that those stories are reflective of the nuance, the emotional complexity within the Black community is absolutely incorrect, because the stories that hit the top of the charts are disproportionately those that are of suffering. Look at The Hate U Give, right? An absolute blockbuster of a book. And that was the first really large book by a Black author to get adapted in quite a long time, in quite a while. And those stories that tend to perform well when they are stories that feature excessive suffering. But when you are a Black child, reading is no longer fun for you, because the only way that you get to see yourself depicted is if your depiction is justified by some sort of trauma present. And then that's the same for white readers. White readers only find Black narratives of interest when they are featuring excessive trauma. That's the only way that they can kind of appreciate Black folk. And that happens specifically because of the disproportionate amount of painful imagery that we are shown from day one.
I want to hone in on that when we get back, because it sounded like you said that the only way white people can have this sort of sympathy for Black people is if they see it or read about our trauma as well. But I could be wrong. We're going to check me when we get back on Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Fox Soul. Welcome back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black today is the normalization of Black trauma. Jesse, I wanted to hone in on what you said when you talked about the books, and how when other people from other ethnicities read these books, it's kind of the only way that they can feel for us. Did I get that wrong or right?
No, it's a two-part thing. That is true, but also there's more complexity than I was able to represent. The other half of that issue is that those are the only books that are marketed as interesting, right? This is not just a reader issue. It's not just—
Well, that in itself is interesting, that only the books that reflect Black trauma are books that are labeled as interesting to read, which means that it gets a little more attention than any other books that may be just as interesting, right?
Yes, there's been a big push to focus on narratives that do depict Black joy, because those aren't the ones that are getting into the hands of children who are actually interested in reading more about Black people that doesn't have to be synonymous with suffering. And it's so hard to advocate and fight for those books, because not only readers, but publishing doesn't want to book those deals. Publishing doesn't want to put as much marketing energy into those types of narratives when they can simply reach for a narrative that they know is going to sell well, because the way that Black people can be visible in society is if it's justified with excessive suffering.
Well, hot damn, who knew that? Mona Lisa, why?
Wow, man, you're talking, the literary world for me is kind of like a unknowing world, if you will, because I just started to read, honestly, as an adult. I started reading like in my late 20s and 30s. And the most that I will ever read is self-help books and things like that. So, I can't necessarily say why to that specific issue, but I can say that, when you're looking at what's happening with the Facebook and the Instagram and stuff like that, that Facebook and Instagram there are legislations now that have been put down on them that they're now having to execute. And they're having to execute these, and they're starting to have to go through all of the different feeds that they're allowing, what they're not allowing, and stuff like that. And so they're now pushing things past a preview to find out whether or not it's rated a certain rate. And if it is, it can't be shown. And if so, on what hours? Is it only in the evening hours, in the late hours? It's almost becoming like television. Facebook and Instagram is going through a rating system, and they are now being looked at from that perspective. And it is because of what we're showing, all the different traumatic things that are on Facebook and Instagram.
Right. Kim,
my
can we
hope
connect
is
this?
that what's being shown on Facebook, based on what you just said, what we know is that many Black creators are being shadow banned in the process of that. And so in being able to speak up about things, they're their content is being hidden. Also, with around what Jesse was saying around the publishing industry, which is historically white, you think about the help. So if we're going to, let's say we get off of police brutality, right? And we move on to the help and what the help did in showing Black women in that same position of being maids, and then elevating white folks at the end of that. When you talk about the movie versus, in the book and that sort of thing, those are the things that get greenlit. That was written by a white woman, but those are the things that get greenlit and then that are pushed marketing wise so that we're watching that. And what happens is when white people become acquainted, and when we become acquainted with only trauma and pain, then out in the world we tend to accept that because we think it is part of our legacy. It's part of the way that we operate in the world, which is why you see something like Black Panther move the way it did, because it's so rare that we see those kind of stories where we are superheroes, when we do live in this world of fantasy, sci-fi, and that sort of thing. There's pushes for that kind of content because it doesn't exist. And so what I think we're all talking about, I think for me, I'm not saying that we should not see, Bloody Sunday was what it was, right? But you saw Bloody Sunday on TV, and there was a reason Bloody Sunday was so impactful. There was a reason why George Floyd was impactful, but it cannot be the only thing that we're watching, especially at the rates of which we're consuming that content.
Right. If you talk to 90s babies, right, one of their favorite movies is Love and Basketball, which has nothing to do with our trauma. It has everything to do with us excelling and loving. So, yeah, if the video footage, since you brought up George Floyd, let's go there, Kim. If the video footage of George Floyd being murdered by the police had not been caught on video, would Derek Chauvin have even been charged and sentenced for the murder, Trey?
That's a great question. And, on the flip side, I would definitely say no. So, it's like a double-edged sword right here. It's just like that whole George Floyd, it definitely, I feel like, made white people sympathize for us more because they was actually able to see what was happening. And I'm the type of guy, whenever I see these videos, the first thing I do, I go into the comments and see who's commenting and what they are saying. And I have recently, since that, especially since the George Floyd, seen a lot more white people try to become our allies, which was dope because you didn't really see that much. You didn't see that during the Rodney King for real, or if you saw, we didn't really know. But the whole Black Lives Matter, and you had more people marching, more white people marching in LA and in these rallies, more so than us. So that was a dope part about showing, that whole incident and showing some of the trauma, is that some of the non-Black people are finally kind of starting to sympathize with us.
Yeah, I wait for the day that white people get so sick of seeing Black trauma that they just start a whole campaign called, "Can y'all just leave Black people alone?"
Right.
That's what I'm waiting on.
And we almost there. I think we almost there. I think,
I think for somebody who, I work in the diversity, equity, inclusion space, when you look at what white people are really willing to do around processes, around system, around giving up privilege and power, sure, I'll march. That doesn't cost me anything. Sure, I'll put a Black square on my social media. That doesn't cost me anything. But when we really start talking about the systems at which, the ways that they vote, where they're willing to live, where they're willing to send their kids to school, all of that stuff plays a role. And even if they, come and integrate, then whose narrative gets the louder voice in those situations? And do white people even recognize and notice what that looks like? So I think, when we are talking about this from a perspective, I think really what one of the things we can talk about is why does America, or why does the world continuously have to watch Black trauma in order to believe it? We have enough books, we have enough history. I'm in diversity, equity, inclusion. You don't know how many people come to us and say, can we hear the stories? Can we have our employees of color share their stories? No, we are not going to share one more story. You don't deserve our stories. There's enough data around what we have been through if you really want to make a change in order to do so.
Well, there's also a segment of the population that doesn't even believe slavery happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That right there.
It's so far away. Like they can't relate to, because they didn't see it. And when you're reading the history books, that doesn't resonate to white people. It's like, oh, because they're like, well, my father wasn't the slave master and my grandfather wasn't the slave master. So they can't really relate to really what's been going on. So a lot of times, they really have to see it to believe it. It's been times I grew up with white friends, and if something happened to me, they would be the main ones like, oh my God, man, oh, I'm sorry, that's not fair. That's not fair. You know what I mean? Trey, that's not fair with what's going, like they will actually see it, and then they will stand up and, because they actually witnessed it and saw it. You know what I mean? Which is good. So, but if they don't see it, a lot of times they don't get it. They don't relate. They just can't relate. It's far.
Mona Lisa, I hear you wanting to jump in.
Oh, I'm over here like double dutching, like, let me in, let me in. Listen, this is the reason why I was saying in the beginning, some people have to see to believe. Even our Black, rich, privileged, brought up in a good life kids don't even believe it. I mean, there's been times when I've had to look at my daughter, even though she's gone to prison, got out, living a new life and stuff like that, before that, and had to make her realize that there are certain things that she's going to experience in this life. And I am so glad that they are still showing all of this, because it's not just trauma that's brutal, police brutality, like I said earlier. It's not just murder. It's coming from the educational system. Now let's talk about from the literary system. It's coming from, look at NFL Terrell Owens, the NFL star Terrell Owens. He just went through this past weekend with his neighbor, who's a white woman, who, if he had not caught it on camera, that she was basically saying in so many words, and I'm going to paraphrase before I get crucified, that, I'm a white woman. And if I just call the police right now, and say that a Black man is doing something to me, they're going to take my side. If he had not recorded that, first of all, he would have not even done anything but go to prison and probably had to fight for the rest of his life against something that somebody said. But if he had not seen this on some form of media of some sort, this type of trauma, he would not have even realized that I need to record this, because this could come up against me. It's educating us. It is traumatizing us. I won't deny that. But at the same time, it's also educating us that we need to be aware. People don't believe that this stuff really happens.
Yeah, she said you're a Black man coming after a white woman.
Yeah.
So that was, it definitely spoke to a difference. And what's so funny is they're saying the silent part out loud consistently and still not believing it. But you're saying it and not believing it at the same time. Blows my mind. Jesse?
I have somewhat of a different perspective. It's not necessarily that I disagree. It's that I do want to point out that not believing Black people from their own mouth is in of itself a form of racism. That is racist. The fact that you even need a video is racism. The fact that Black voices are not credible, they have been, and if we keep having this emphasis on evidence, then they never will be. Also consider the fact of all of the cases of body cam, dash cam footage, of all of the things that we've had on tape for years, and how that hasn't necessarily led to more convictions. I mean, even in the George Floyd case, Jacob Frey has always declined in his 20-year career. He has never once prosecuted a white cop for brutalizing a Black person.
Hold that thought, Jesse. We're coming right back to you on Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and Jesse says we shouldn't need a video to believe Black people. Well, the conversation of Black trauma will continue, but a lot of us live in a financial trauma. I'm here to handle that business right now with the 3-week rule. Everyone wants to be financially free. One word will help you get there. Wait. Yes, wait, but not long. Just wait 3 weeks to buy that new car. Wait 3 weeks to refi your home mortgage, and wait 3 weeks to finance any major purchase. Listen, lately I've been waiting 3 weeks to fill up my gas tank. These days, that is a major purchase, okay? But I found that there is something to the wait, especially if you're like me and you don't want people like old dude in the car lot telling you, I can't get you that car, but I can get you this one. Or if you, like me, and don't want to pay $5,000 on something that actually costs $2,500 because the interest rate is so high, then you gotta wait the 3 weeks. Why wait 3 weeks, Tammi Mack? Because that's how fast the average ScoreMaster user takes to boost his or her credit score by an average of 61 points, people. And listen, 61 points added to your credit score can save you tens of thousands on everything we finance. ScoreMaster technology was developed by credit data scientists to boost your credit score higher, and faster than you thought possible. ScoreMaster is so easy, it takes about a minute to get started. How many points can you add to your credit? Be sure to visit scoremaster.com/BOBB for the special 7-day trial I got for you. Yep. Try ScoreMaster today and see how many plus points you can add to your credit score. That's scoremaster.com/BOBB. Again, scoremaster.com/BOBB. I don't want anybody telling me what to buy or paying more for a major purchase than necessary. And that's why I'm consistently tracking my credit. Welcome back to the Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black today is the normalization of Black trauma. Please welcome the CEO of Kim Crowder Consulting, Kim Crowder, criminal justice activist Mona Lisa Johnson, booktuber and the host of Bow Ties and Books, Jesse Morales Small, and actor, comedian, and producer Trey Elliott is with us as well. Listen, I want to go back to your last thought, Jesse, if you're still there with me.
No.
If not, you're like, no, not really, Tammi Mack. There was a lot of commercials there. But I want to talk about the books and how you say that publishers don't want to publish books if they're about Black joy necessarily. And that's the same way in the movie industry, right? If it's not roots, then they don't want to see it or believe that it could be anything successful in terms of Black people. So why does Black trauma play so well in the entertainment industry? Do we blame Black people for that?
I think that it would be incorrect to put the burden on Black folk for that, because Black people have only very recently gained a semblance of control in Hollywood and in being able to be the ones behind the stories being told about us. That was set up well in advance by white, wealthy producers, directors, writers in Hollywood ever since, oh man, I always forget, Birth of a Nation. And so to suddenly pivot and say, oh, no, like it's Black people. No, absolutely not, especially because Black folks aren't the ones watching these films in droves, right? Like obviously we all saw Roots, but who made Roots what it was? That was not the Black community, you know, like in the Roots-like films is essentially what I'm saying. They get these big audiences specifically because of non-Black people getting excited and showing up about them. And then in order to break out into the industry, you, as a Black author, as a Black writer, director, et cetera, you have to break out with a narrative like that in order for your voice to be credible, in order to be getting those opportunities and getting money behind your productions, et cetera. And so I think it ultimately can also be a question of why is it that we are so willing to write off Black stories if they don't have joy in them in the first place? And I think that that's on non-Black society as a whole. Right.
Trey, I know you wanted to jump in here.
I mean, no, in that sense, you're right. And like we were saying, we used an example talking about Black Panther, how we all, the Black community all came in, we came in deep with dashikis on, had our accents ready to roll to see this movie. But like I was saying, even with that, it was still a Marvel film. And Marvel films are, they're going to do well internationally because Marvel is Marvel and they have a big internet, white, Black, Asian, everybody love Marvel. But what I think we need to do is when it comes to something like that with the films is that we don't support or we don't have the budgets or we don't have the distribution or we don't have the outlet for those films to do as good as they used to do. You know what I mean? Back in the 90s.
Right. So Kim, is it a Black thing? Is it that we keep going to see these movies that perpetuate Black trauma and so it gets the love? Is it that we have like our algorithms on our own personal platforms are showing up the Black trauma because that's what we consistently stop and look at? Is it our fault?
Yeah, I would never say that we are at fault for anything that is happening in our community that is inequitable, period. Like we just can never put that on us. What we can talk about what our options are. So for instance, you talk about somebody like Issa Rae and what Issa Rae was able to do on YouTube, and then find that support at a larger scale. So this idea that it's not happening to some degree is not necessarily fair. I don't think that is what's happening across the board. I do think we can be selective about what we are willing to, where we're willing to spend our money. And we can certainly do research about what that looks like. The only way that really moves forward is if there's a collective movement, right? When we start talking about things like that, it has to be an intentional collective movement at a larger scale. So are we at fault? No, I wouldn't say that. I did want to mention one thing, what I have noticed. So I work in the business world. What you rarely see when you talk to people are them reading books about Black leaders. So I'll give you an example. So you say, hey, you ask a CEO, who's your favorite author? John Maxwell, a white man. You continuously hear the name of white men as being seen as leaders. You rarely ever hear of Black men, or especially not Black women, who are seen as leaders where they learn from us. When we talk about Black trauma, if you can create this idea that Black people are only good for trauma, then you don't see the brilliance of Black folks. The way that we learn about our Black history in the school setting is very much so connected to trauma. We very rarely in the school setting hear of triumph outside of the civil rights movement, outside of slavery. And so when you teach history in that way, we all in some way start to believe that is the history of our people, that is how we should be seen. That is how we take a look at the ways that we consume things. And white people have been impacted by that as well as us. We are all unlearning at this point. And so that's why when we talk about this balance between, do I say it necessarily needs to go away? No, I agree with Jesse in that way. I agree with Mona Lisa. But can we please get the opportunity to see ourselves in other ways? And that's at every area, because in that, it's not just us who's being changed by that. It is society as a whole.
Yeah. Mona Lisa, you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. There has to be a balance in everything in this world. What goes up must come down, what goes around, it's just balance. And, I don't think that we just need to stay woke. I think we need to see woke, and it's not just for the Black Americans, it's for all Americans, because it's for the safety of our Black lives, because actually it's indeed our lives matter. Our lives absolutely matter. And so seeing woke to me is more important equally important. Let me say equally important as staying woke.
I want to get a little personal here, because I want to ask each of you, how does it feel when you see videos of Black people being victimized by the police or white people on social media or the news? Mona Lisa, I want to stay with you there. How does that personally make you feel?
It aggravates me. It makes me just want to knock somebody's head off their shoulders. It makes me want to, rise up and stand to the occasion and realize who I am and who I've been called to be as an advocate on behalf of our people. It makes me just really take a serious look at, oh my God, I cannot believe that this is really, really happening. I'm still in shock every time I look at it. I'm still asking the questions, why? I'm still, rising to the occasion to corral all of the leaders and the people who have a voice and who don't have a voice, and just making people trying to get people to realize that this is so important, that you start to, make small changes even within your own life, then go to the outer circles. It's just a multitude of emotions that I experience.
Yeah. Jesse, how do you feel when you watch these videos?
Personally, they've been so deeply debilitating to me that I absolutely refuse to watch them. I won't. Under no circumstances will you catch me watching anything like that, specifically because I don't need to see it to show up. I'm going to be at the rally regardless. I'm going to be donating regardless. And so for me, my radical resistance practice is that for everything that I see that is pushing pain in the Black community, I'm going to recounter that by consuming Black joy instead. And that's because for me, that's how I fight back. I fight back with joy and resistance. Like I'm not going to allow a police officer to cause me pain, but I'll be at the rally.
Wow.
You
Oh,
may
you have a deeper level of understanding than me. I have to give you kudos and props for that. Trey, how does it make you feel?
Well, I follow Sean King, so I see the stuff every day, all day. I'm like, I gotta follow him sometime. But it's the fact, I hate to say it, but I watch a video and I'm one of the ones I watch it like 10 times. And I just be like, I know I shouldn't be watching it. And I know it's subconsciously having an effect on me. You know what I mean? Sometimes anxiety levels be up. You don't know where it
Yeah,
comes from. And it's
yeah.
like, I know where it comes from. It's from all the BS that I'm looking. So, so I feel guilty, to be honest,
Wow.
like just keep
Wow.
watching it and keep consuming it, knowing that, is there more I can do about it? Is this something that I'm not doing enough of? Especially with me having a 22-year-old son, it's just like, it just makes me be more concerned about what's happening, to our youth and to our, I kind of have a guilty, whatever with it. Like,
And
damn,
I think, unfortunately, it heightens a person's perspective as well.
yeah.
So, like, if somebody, I don't know, if a white woman skips you in line, you all of a sudden think it's racism. You know
Let me
what I
tell you
mean?
something.
Because
It is funny that you say that because I'm thinking everything racist now.
right.
That
It,
a white lady used the grocery store divider thing to divide her groceries from mine. I damn near lost it.
yeah, you like,
Like,
oh,
yo,
so you go, oh, so you don't want your groceries mixing with my
yeah,
groceries.
I'm like,
Okay,
yo,
I
your
see you,
groceries
white
better
lady. Yeah.
Yo, I felt like that. And I said, Trey, you in Whole Foods, calm down. If you was in Rouse, you wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
So,
And meanwhile, she's thinking the audacity of him to be in Whole Foods.
exactly.
that is too much, too much.
Kim, how does this make you feel? You deal with it on a daily basis, literally. You teach people how to deal with this world that we're living in. So, how does it make you feel to watch traumatic videos of the Black experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't watch them. Honest to goodness, I don't watch them. I don't have to watch them to sign a petition. I don't have to watch them to call my local legislation. I don't have to watch it to believe the stories of Black people. The probability that what we've gone through is that versus having a great encounter with police officers or whatever that looks like.
Got it.
I'm going to sign the petition. I'm going to do that work instead of spend my time watching that because I know the repercussions, the repercussions of that, what that means for me, the leveling of anxiety, the way I dream, the way I worry about the people that I love.
Let's take a quick break on the people that you love. We'll be back. Back to Business of Being Black with Tammi Mack. I'm Tammi Mack, and the business of being Black today is the normalization of Black trauma. Okay. Now, Jesse and Kim, you say you don't watch it. You don't let it come past or through your scroll even. So teach us a lesson here, Jesse. How can we unplug from Black trauma porn when it gets to be too much? How do we get whatever that is in your mind that says, yeah, unnecessary?
Sure. So for me, radical resistance practices are how I survive. That's how I survive as a Black queer person in America. And so I think that what it is each an individual person realizing what that looks like for them, because the world, and sometimes even in our own household, is not going to teach us how to love on ourselves. We are so good at teaching our children, hands on the wheel, don't make any quick movements, because that will save your life. But also seeing this constantly can take your life, because depression, mental illness, et cetera, in the Black community is, as we've touched on in this segment, is not widely discussed, and it's not cared for the way. So for me personally, the way to unplug from that is I have my comfort TV shows, and I have rules where, especially as a YouTuber, since I'm always on social media, I have rules where it's okay, if I have seen something traumatic, read something traumatic, then I need to counter that by looking at Black social, there's Color Me Courtney, who is a Black influencer getting a lot of attention on Instagram. And her whole practice is just making videos about her being Black and full figured and happy and cheerful. And her videos are just that's part of my self-care practice. And so it is taking a bath and listening to uplifting soul romantic music by Black voices that those are just as radical resistance practices as being tuned in and aware.
I'm curious. Give me 2 of your television shows you used to get away.
So absolutely Insecure.
Okay.
And then I shouldn't say Euphoria, but
Euphoria.
There's a lot of issues with the show, but given that I struggled with depression as a teenager, I really, really connect to Zendaya. There was drug use in my household. And so, but the visual images, and there is so much joy in that show. There's so much queer joy. There's so much brown joy. That's how I unplug. And then it's like this, it's a high school drama on top of that. If I think of something, one of my more fluffy Steven Universe. It's an animated cartoon that.
Yeah, I'm like, that's fluffy.
It's so fluffy. It's so fluffy. But what was her name? Estelle? Estelle is one of the voices of the characters. And it's a really beautiful way to just be done with the world. And it's all about loving yourself as who you are as like a full-figured person, queer person, etc. It's a great show.
Mona Lisa, you talked about the Terrell Owens video, right? And I'm curious to know, can you think of the last maybe 3 Black trauma videos that have crossed your vision, your path in the last month?
Well, definitely Terrell Williams over the week. Owens over the weekend. I saw that over the weekend, and before that was the Sesame Street. With the character where the character shunned off the Black little girls, and that was very unnerving because it was so obvious. And I think the other thing that was before that was it was regarding incarceration, where they've been letting out all of they let out a lot of people during COVID, and because they're not able to pass a drug test in states, where marijuana is legal to a certain degree or not. If you're caught with marijuana, they're sending you back to prison, and so that's just really, devastating in my opinion. Those 3 videos. Yeah,
Trey. She speaks of those 3 videos. If we don't see this stuff, do we know that we have to change it? If we don't see it, how do we know what needs to be changed? How do we know what to talk to our Congress people about? How do we know who to vote for? How do we know who has our backs? If these are things that we don't see, because honestly, without the internet, George Floyd would have never happened the way in which it happened.
Right. There's no, that we have to see it. There's no other way, at the end of the day, we wouldn't know about Brittany, Griner, the basketball player, the WNBA player for real, if it wasn't
Breonna Taylor, who, the police officers just got charged. Yeah. And that was on the heels of pressure from the people because we saw it.
Right. Michael Arbery. It's so many. Ahmad. Yeah. So I'm mixing that, but the Arbery. Yeah. It's like, we it's to a point to where we have to see it, but we have to see it for something totally different. We have to see it for conviction, so these guys can get convicted. You know what I mean? That's really why we have to really see it, is so they can get tried and go to jail. You know what I mean? Because if we don't see it, majority of those people who've been, who finally got convicted, they would probably still be free. You know what I mean? But that's the main reason.
Go ahead, Kim. I was going to ask you though, isn't that true that because we're witnessing it with our own eyes, that it gives us more of a reason to say, this happened, you saw it, now let's do something? Doesn't it put more pressure on the powers that be?
Philando Castile, I've never watched that full video. George Floyd, I've never watched that full video. Ahmaud Arbery, I've never watched that full video. Did I make calls because of those videos? Did I sign petitions because of those videos? Yes, but I didn't consume those videos. I knew those videos.
But you did it because of the videos.
I don't disagree with that. But what I am saying is, do we have to see it? Because the idea that it has become so normalized for us to watch murder, nobody is supposed to ever experience watching death. It's just not normal. But we have normalized that, and we have specifically normalized that in Black bodies. And that's where my challenge is. Should I have awareness? Absolutely. But does awareness always have to come in watching from beginning to end the actual death of a Black person who looks like me, who reminds me of my brother, who reminds me of my cousin. I don't believe that's the case. And so even with Breonna Taylor, we did not necessarily watch her murder, but we did see what happened. And then we took action based on that, because there is no video of her being murdered, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is where is the middle ground? Where is the ground that we get to hold so that we don't have to be so impacted in our mental trauma as Black people on a consistent and regular basis in order for us to get movement? And so the fact of the matter is that, yes, we can have awareness, but do we have to consume it at the rates we consume it? Do we have to consume it from back and forth? Do you have to watch it over and over and over? I don't believe that's the case. I believe that you can create awareness without that level of visualization. Now, George Floyd, did that have to happen? Yes, but we have to remember that happened at a certain period of time. Everybody was home. Right. COVID was happening. It was a very specific moment in time. The world was watching what happened. I don't know if that would have happened if things were business as usual, if things were back to normal. And so I think when we think about this, just to remember that as Black people, you get to protect your peace, and you don't have to feel guilty about protecting your peace by watching a video. You can be an activist around that, but what you don't have to do is you don't have to sacrifice your mental health in the process.
I've always thought that there has to be two ways. There has to be several ways, as a matter of fact, to get to a specific goal. And I take that by saying there was Malcolm X, there were the Black Panthers, there was Martin Luther King, and they all had different ways of going about seeking justice for Black people. And so maybe this is a case too, where there are some who have to see the video to know that this is happening. And then there are those who don't have to see the video, but either way, both perhaps maybe justifies the trauma in Black people's lives and how we can move past it. Mona Lisa, is that an idea?
I agree with that. We're not just seeing video, we're seeing truth. And so sometimes you just have to be like that movie, The Shining, with Jack, whatever his name was.
Jack Nicholson.
Mm-hmm. Jack Nicholson, yeah. I'm horrible with names. That you just know what. Can you handle the truth? You have to ask yourself that question.
Well, that's a whole nother movie, Mona Lisa. You went from a 1970s movie to a 2000 movie. Mona Lisa, how can we keep up with you and your work?
I was going back to that. The way you can keep up with me and my work, is to just really follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Also, watch the TED Talks that I do. I'm going to be doing another TED Talk here in Boston in about another 7 days, August the 11th. Oh, no, excuse me, August the 15th. Also, you can, follow me with prisonerofhopetv.com, which just gives you some insight, as to the world of incarceration and how families are being impacted.
Kim, tell us about the initiatives you're working on at Kim Crowder Consulting.
Yeah, we work with organizations to build processes and systems that create a more equitable workplace culture, leadership coaching. And so my background is in Six Sigma leadership. And where you can find us is kimcrowderconsulting.com. I'm on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Follow us there, sign up for the newsletter if you want the inside scoop about what we're working on, or just to get great tips. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Trey. Please tell us about your upcoming projects and events. We need to look out for you, Trey Elliott.
Yes, first you can just follow me on my Instagram. It's comedian Trey Elliott, TREYELLIOT, comedian in the front. You got to do a lot of commentary videos of happy things to make you laugh, get you kind of away from some of the trauma, But also right now I'm on the Rock the Mic tour with Tony Rock. So I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, August 11th through the 14th. Then I'm in New York, the 23rd and the 24th at the Comedy Cellar, and in New Jersey from the 25th through the 27th at the Stress Factory. That's August, so you guys can check me out there, and just follow me on my Instagram, and you'll see where I'm at, locally. And you can catch me on season 2 of Hacks on HBO Max as well, man. So I appreciate you for having me on here.
Thank you so much for being here, Jesse. Bow ties and books, I gotta know about it.
Well, I have a YouTube and an Instagram titled Bow Ties and Books, and my YouTube channel is basically me wearing a bow tie and talking about books. And the literature that I focus on, there's a lot of queer literature, there's a lot of BIPOC literature, And the narratives are a lot of times like fantasy, thriller, horror books, really any narrative that does not feature Black people suffering, or BIPOC people as a whole suffering, are what I tend to focus on my channel. And I'm also in the process of writing a book. And that's
as you should. Should.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. It should be done by the end of this year, and then I'll be able to send it out for submission. So fingers crossed.
In one word, and this is a hard one, but in one word, if I'm a white person, convince me that there is Black trauma without me having to watch a video, and allow me to believe it in one word. I know that's hard. That's a real tricky question. Kim?
I didn't know you were going to do me first. One word.
We'll circle back. Mona Lisa, what you got?
Yeah.
Rampant.
What you got, Kim?
Truth.
Jesse?
Credibility.
Trey?
Ancestors.
Woo! And that is the business of being Black on Fox Soul with Tammi Mack.